Do 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 phenomena do 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 phenomena do 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 do. All right, we're gonna get some Diablo 2 Resurrected going. I played a little bit earlier, did the first two quests, got me little guy started. Let's get back into it. Might be a little more commentary this time. As it says in the description too, I tend to get, I can only imagine watching it, but I tend to get a little bored with the audio since I've played so many hundreds of hours of this game that I'll probably put on some podcasts. So I hope you guys are looking for some podcast recommends, because that'll be on there too. We'll see how much commentary happens. And yeah, other than that. Oh, that's good Java. Alright, so got the nicotine hits. We got the caffeine here. We got the bong. About 4 hours to kill. Probably should have waited to start the Steam and stream until I got in here, but that's alright. It's only being a punk for a minute. La la, you mad because I've got too many things open? Alright, so yeah, that's the last guy I had a couple years ago. We are playing with Pit now. Oh. Okay. Let's get in there, and then we'll pop on. Pop on the podcasts. In fact, I might go have one more cigarette break. Nah. Yeah? Yeah, I think I will. This coffee tastes too good. We'll get in here, and you guys will want to fast forward maybe 5 minutes. I'm feeling real uppity. I'll play some Ace Combat a little bit too. We'll see. Ooh, that tastes good. Alright, I'll leave you with the ambiance of the game for a minute. I'll be right back.
town.
Alright. Let's go redo this Blood Raven shit. God damn. This thing just doesn't want to go out. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Sometimes I go back and listen to these things, and somebody already said something, and I'm like, and oh, by the way, let me show you how smart I am.
Welcome to Recotopia, a happy home for recommended movies, TV shows, music, video games, foodstuffs, and more from three people you can definitely trust. Trustability varies by region, no guarantees implied. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Atkinson, Jeremy Scott, and Aaron Dicer.
I like to watch, Eve.
What do you mean? I like to watch.
I like to watch.
Hello, everybody. It's Recotopia, episode 99.
Wow.
I'm joined by Aaron Dicer.
Oh, hi to the host, Enrinos.
And joined by Jeremy Scott.
This is me.
And today's big recommend is going to be Being There. Funnily enough, now that this episode is finally being made and everything, the previous episode, I'm like, Aaron's not going to be here. And made a joke about being there. And
You
because
can't keep me away.
that's right, and because snow kept me in New York last week, and because of other factors, we're now here this week, and Aaron is with us. So if you're like listening to our episodes back to back and wondering what the fuck is Aaron doing here, that's how you normally react.
Yeah, I was gonna say as if that's not the normal reaction. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, how you guys doing? How's everybody doing?
I'm doing swell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Notice
good
Chad
times.
is lively today, as always. And I just said that before Aaron could say whether he was cool or not. You know,
Well, I don't know if I'm cool, but I'm feeling all right. So
feeling
thank
all
you.
right. Okay.
Yep.
No, but Chad is out there in force today. Glad to see you guys. Anybody got any small?
No big deal.
It's so small and light.
It's small, it's tiny, it's petite, it's wee.
I will kick us off here. I saw a 2015 movie a week and a half ago that I had never seen called Bridge of Spies. This is a Spielberg-Tom Hanks collaboration. And I am not 100% sure what kept me away from this. Let me Google real quick.
Also, Coen Brothers, right? They wrote.
The Coen Brothers co-wrote it, yes. I think, I had a bad experience with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy 3 or 4 years prior to that. And I don't even think it was that movie's fault. But I didn't have a good time with that movie. And I think in my head, I just called Bridge of Spies the same kind of movie as that. This is not a spy movie. This is almost a legal thriller. So I had it completely wrong. Rylance is arrested almost in the beginning of the movie, and Tom Hanks, he's accused of being a Russian spy. And Tom Hanks is basically assigned to defend him and decides to do his legal duty and do a good job, and starts to find the case kind of circumstantial, while the public starts to see him as a villain. They throw bricks through his windows. spy. And then there's a whole secondary story about a U.S. Pilot who's shot down in Russia. And then the movie is about them trying to do a prisoner exchange on this bridge, the Titular Bridge. And I was riveted, and I should have watched it long ago. I mean, it was nominated for awards. I know Rylance won, I think.
He won.
Yeah, that was the year that Stallone was supposed to get his, and I think
Rylance
Rylance
stole it.
swept in.
So yeah, it's a shame on me kind of thing here. It's on one of the movie channels. Google won't tell me which one, but that's where I saw it. And yeah, it's riveting. Amy Ryan, Alan Alda, Billy Magnuson, all in this, all great. Yeah, 3 thumbs up.
Everybody fell in love with Rylance in this movie. He had a long career before this, but this is the movie that got him to where he was in everything sort of afterwards. And I just love the constant refrain of I don't know, do you think it'll help? You know, and every time Hank gives him an idea about whether something's going to work or not, I don't know, do you think it'll help?
So good.
Yeah.
Honest question, and maybe you guys have an answer. Has Spielberg made a bad movie? I know he's made a few mediocre ones. What's his bad movie?
Yeah.
War Horse is bad, you think?
I think War Horse is eye-rolling.
And
Okay.
it's got its fans, but 1941 is not.
That is, I think, that would be my answer probably too, would be 1941. But in general, if Spielberg directs a movie, you're going to get at least competent filmmaking, and in this case, I think you've got a really great story to go along with it.
You're going to get good visuals, even in War Horse. There's some good visuals, even as I'm cry-laughing at the stupidity of what I'm watching.
Has he ever made a movie that's like you would give it like a 3.6 on the IMDb? I don't think he's ever done that. But
yeah.
I see you in the chat, James, suggesting Lost World, and you go away.
Yeah, Crystal Skull's probably there.
But maybe.
It's not The Room bad or anything. It's just.
I will happily walk with the Crystal Skull Reclamation Project. I think there's some interesting things going on in that movie.
You better cut out a bunch of shit, and then maybe.
I think that's fair. That's fair.
All right.
Alrighty. How about you, Aaron?
I finally got around to seeing Barton Fink.
Coen Brothers strike again.
Yes, it is we are going Coen. So I, for whatever reason, thought I had seen this. I had not seen this movie. It is so good, and I think a lot of that has to do with how prescient it is about the industry. And so many of the themes and the things it's doing in this movie are now kind of being done in movies, at large. But this was kind of ahead of the curve, going, here's all the things wrong with what we're doing. And I know there's some stuff even earlier than this that draws attention to some of these things. I felt it in my soul when he was talking about his brain in such a work culture where it's like your job is your sweat. Right? And he's like, my job is my brain. So like the love of creativity and just the way the industry sucks it out of him. And then of course you've got a John Goodman performance for the ages in this movie. I loved Barton. Loved it. So good.
Yeah, John Turturro is probably his best ever performance as well. And this is maybe the only movie, like major movie, where he's the main character.
I am overburdened.
But the whole, John Goodman is telling him all this stuff. He's very cordial towards him, and that whole thing where, he keeps telling him, I could tell you stories, and then by the end of it, John Goodman is like, because you don't listen. It's like such a big part. Oh, it's such a great moment, and it's I grow more appreciation for Barton Fink every year, probably.
It's so good. It's so good.
Many times. Well, this movie is not in the category of the two that were mentioned, but I ran across a movie on Hulu. I was like, I like Jake Johnson. I'll watch this movie called Self-Reliance. And you go on the IMDb and it's a 6.1. So there's people kind of like, but you know what? It's one of those type of movies that the actors in it are just so fun and engaging. It's like I would literally watch you guys do anything. Basically, is what it comes down to. I don't think the execution of this idea is what it could be if maybe perhaps Jake Johnson were given more time to cook this thing. But it is fun. He is a guy who's just gotten out of a bad relationship, or it was a good relationship, and he just broke up, and he's down in the dumps. And then one day, a limousine comes by, and Andy Samberg is in the back of the limousine. And Andy Samberg, playing himself, tells Jake Johnson to get in the limo. And then Andy Samberg then tells him that there's do you want to go where I'm going? Basically, Jake Johnson's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And Andy Samberg's like, really?
I'll put that to
You don't
good
even
use.
know who I am. He's like, well, yeah, Andy Samberg. I know you. Blah blah blah. Whatever. It's like, okay. And so so the limousine ends up dropping him off in this like nowhere place or whatever. And Jake Johnson's like, so you want to hang out sometime? He's like, all right, see ya. As Andy Samberg just zooms off. And he goes in and he's there's two guys there who tell him that we have set up a game that is on the internet that only a select few people can watch, where we will hunt you down and you have to survive, and you can win, I think it's like $1 million. I can't remember the prize at the end of it, but the rules are basically that, hey, we're doing this all over the country, we might not even get to your town. So there's that. And it's also the fact is that if he's with anybody if he's not alone, they cannot go after him. They cannot try to kill him if he's not alone. So he exploits this rule by trying to get as many people around him as possible. Even at one point, hiring a homeless man who becomes like he's maybe one of the best parts of this. He hires this homeless man to hang around him at all times, and then there's at some point another contestant contacts him and says, I'm going through the same thing, and this other contestant is played by Anna Kendrick. So they've decided to like sort of sleep together, but they're not like romantically involved in any way or whatever, and they're just trying to make sure that they always they're never alone and everything. Some other like weird stuff starts happening. The actual like scenes where they think that they're being attacked are actually pretty well done. They're like horrifying to like anything off in the distance that could be ready to attack is horrifying. But if you like the actors that are featured in this, I think you'll have a good time with it. I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, this is the best movie ever, but I do think a lot of people.
I do like a lot of those people.
It's definitely on my watch list. I'm gonna check it out here soon. So yeah.
All right, we're gonna move on to the big recommend, which is Being There from 1979.
I'm fine. It's just that you're so big.
It's so huge.
It's a good rule, but this is bigger than rules.
It's bigger on the inside.
Is it? I noticed.
Directed by Hal Ashby, who also did Harold and Maude, and that was another one that was considered for the 1970s comedy. He did The Last Detail, which is another great movie, but settled on this one. This one, I read the book for Being There. I read this book back in college. Had a satire class, so I read this book and then watched the movie and all that. So it's been around for a really long time. I love Peter Sellers so much in these things, although, his personal life. If you read about Peter Sellers' personal life, you might not like this guy. Being There starts off, he plays a character named Chance, who is in this very well-to-do home, and the old man who runs it has died. And now that the old man has died and he has no heirs and nobody to take care of the house anymore, the lawyers have come in, and everybody who worked there and lived there is going to get kicked out. So the first person is the maid. Knows exactly the writing on the wall. She doesn't. She's out. She tells Peter Sellers right off the bat. Tells Chance like, hey, the old man's dead. But he doesn't seem to care. The reason why is he's he's glued to the TV. And that is a big thing for him. He is glued to the TV, and TV is all that's really important to him. And she's like, I just told you that the old man's dead, and you don't seem to care at all. And he's like, he just never really responds. It's like, what do you mean? What is death? What does this mean for me? What does, none of this stuff matters really. I'm not going to miss it. Like, none of and all these thoughts that I'm coming up with are even more complex than what he's probably at the time. And so the lawyers come in. He's still at the house watching TV when the lawyers show up, and they're like, well, who are you? And he says, I'm Chance the gardener, and I've been here since I could remember. Which, that's a thing that we're going to have to wonder about throughout the whole movie. What is his parentage? Where did he come from? There's very obvious Jesus Christ allegories going on in this movie, but it's not the only thing going on. The lawyers end up they talk to him, and they don't know how to react to Chance. And this is what is going to be a major part of this movie as he interacts with people. How can anyone be like this? Like, how can anyone not have just be able to answer these basic questions about themselves, and doesn't seem to know what certain words mean, and doesn't seem to know what the situation is and everything? But all the same seems very normal and natural and whatever. And so by the end of it, he's basically kicked out. But the lawyer does tell him, hey, call me tomorrow. But Chance doesn't know what that means. He doesn't know what call him tomorrow means. So the next thing we see is him walking out of this house to the theme of, if you've watched 2001, I don't know how to pronounce that piece of music that's in 2001, but it's a upbeat, more up-to-date version of that music from 2001. And he's walking out of this house that's in Washington D.C., and immediately you see that this is a very, very extravagant house that's in the middle of a very poor section of the city. And he sees homeless people immediately, and because his maid was black, he starts interacting with black people the same way that he interacted with them back at his house. So the first black woman he sees, he's like, could you get me some lunch? And the woman is sitting there with a bag in her hand going, and just ignores him, as you probably should, because the person is probably crazy, right? Someone just comes up to you and asks, can you get me my lunch? He then interacts with a gang, and he tells them, I need to get to a garden fast because it's winter and I need to sow the seeds and all that. They take it a completely different way and think that he's from some other rival gang member who's trying to deliver a message. And he even gets a knife pulled on him, but Chance doesn't think that there's any danger involved whatsoever. He just stands there with the knife right in front of him, and and the guy's like, give this guy a message when you see him. And he's like, I will give that guy a message when I... And then eventually he runs into a point, it's gotten into the evening, and he runs across an electronics store, has cameras set up where people walking across the sidewalk can see themselves on this. 1979 standards is one of the biggest TVs I've ever seen in my life. I didn't even know they made something this big back then. But he sees himself on TV, which is, of course, a great tool for him. He's like, I'm finally on this thing that I've been watching for decades. And you see him, waving his umbrella around and all that. And he backs up into traffic, and one of the cars backs into his leg, and it crushes it up against another car. And he is not badly injured, but he's injured enough that the chauffeur tries to help him, and a woman named Eve Rand, who's played by Shirley MacLaine. And we just recently did The Apartment. That was the last one before I came back and everything. So we got Shirley MacLaine showing back up on the the Recotopia right here. So she says, let's not take him to a hospital. That's messy. Let's take him back to the house and take care of him. We can have our own doctor look at him and assess him and everything. And as he's in the back seat of the car and she's asking him questions, she just thinks that he's very intense and very deep about everything that he says, and that, you know, and at some point she gives him an alcoholic drink, and of course he has never in his life drank alcohol in his life. And as he drinks the alcohol, that's when she asks, "What is your name?" And he's trying to say Chance the Gardener, but because he's coughing, it becomes Chauncey Gardner, which is one of the many areas of this film where he is trying to say something or do something, and nobody asks for a follow-up, or you know, they don't really go. They just think he is what he is, and or he's got something deep inside of him that he's not letting go, whatever. And so they go to the house, and this is this extravagant, sickening mansion, which I believe is the Biltmore estate.
It is.
It's ridiculous. I mean, like, I don't even know if Charles Foster Kane has a house this big. This is huge. This is huge. It's got everything. It's got, you know, it's got elevators, and it's got rooms upon rooms. He can put a whole hospital in this thing if he wants to. All this stuff. He is put into a wheelchair and is taken up the elevator, and again he says something that is misunderstood. He says, "I've never been in one of these before," meaning the elevator. The elevator man thinks he means the wheelchair, and so he says, "Oh yes, it's one of Mr. Rand's. He's very ill. We've been using, this is one of his." And he goes, and so Chance, thinking he still means the elevator, says, "Does it have a television?" And the elevator man thinks this is very funny. Like, you know, what does it have, a television on the television on the wheelchair? That's a good one, basically. So he goes in and he gets treatment from the Rand's doctor, played by Alan. Is it Richard Dicer? It's Richard, or is it Alan Dicer? I can't remember. There's two guys I get confused their names a lot of times. It's Alan. It's Richard Dicer.
I'll put that to good use.
So you might remember from The Thing, if you've ever seen The Thing, he's in that. But he's the doctor, and he's the one guy in this movie that really kind of understands who Chance is throughout the whole thing. He's never, like, really fooled, or not that Chance is trying to fool anybody, but he's never really fooled in this whole thing. He kind of thinks this is exactly what this guy is. He's a gardener, and he talks about gardening all the time. And so they keep him there. He does some examinations, notices that his leg isn't broken, and then Chance brings up the fact that he's talked to a lawyer, and but he's brought up the fact that he's talked to a lawyer, and so the guy's like, "Oh, so you're gonna have your lawyers come in on this?" And Chance is like, "No, we don't need to bring, no, I don't need." He says claim, which is the second time he's heard claim in this movie. And he's like, "No, there's no need for a claim." He doesn't know what claim means, but he's like, "No reason for a claim or anything like that." And so the doctor's like, "Why don't you just stay here for a couple of days, and then we can make sure that you're good and put you on your way." They wheel Chance in to see the main man of this castle, Benjamin Rand, played by Melvin Douglas, the legendary Melvin Douglas, who won the Oscar for this performance. And again, Chance is misunderstood for having something deep in mind, but this time what really appeals to the Benjamin Rand character is that he misunderstands Chance to say that business has been closed down. He thinks that when Chance says, "My house has been closed down," and the lawyers came in, this very wealthy businessman says, "Oh no, that's what's going to happen to the businessman. The businessman is the one who's really being put down in this country. You know, I feel for you, Chance. I'm going to help you out with this. And I've even decided that I'm going to come up with a fund for businessmen because businessmen are the ones who really suffer in this country, not anybody else that you may have walked past on the way here when you got in your limo. And so, because he's taken such a shine to this story that, oh, he lost his shop, apparently. He lost his business instead of just being a guy who lost his job and lost his home. He thinks that it's a businessman, so he's going to help him out. And this brings him immediately into the political circle, essentially, because Ben introduces him to the president. He has a first name basis with the president, played by Jack Warden, that calls him Bobby, and he invites the president over just before he's about to give a speech on the economy. And so during this speech with the president, the Chance is allowed to sit in on this. I think Jack Warden thinks that he's just a helper of some sort because Ben is very ill and he's on his deathbed basically, but I think he thinks he's a helper at first, so he doesn't even introduce himself at first. And then Ben says, "Hey, this is my friend Chauncey Gardner," and Chauncey is sitting there during there's a couple of moments where the president says the word Chance, and Chance goes, "Yes," like he's addressing him. Yes. And there's this whole thing about the economy, which they are very, I think, appropriately vague about. They cut this conversation up. We don't know exactly what they're talking about concerning the economy. But we do know that once it gets time for Chance to say whatever he says, he just talks about, well, the roots are very good if you take care of them. We have stuff that buds in the spring and summer, and then they die in the winter and fall and all of this. And of course, this is being taken as, oh, this is really, really deep stuff about the economy. Yes, we need to learn. We need to do this. The president actually ends up putting a lot of the stuff that Chance says in this meeting into his speech later to a bunch of businessmen and everything. And the other thing is, now that he has been brought up in the speech, the president brings up Chance in the speech. Now suddenly everybody wants to know who this person is. The president wants to know who he is as soon as he walks out of the meeting. He gets all of his men on the case, and then the newspapers, of course, want to learn. Of course, where are they going to go? They're not going to be able to find anybody who knows Chance whatsoever in this whole thing. He's a man from nowhere, has no driver's license, no tax stuff, nothing that you can look up like anybody else. And so it ends up being where there's just a lot of people doing a wild goose chase, and there's no way that it really, there's only one moment, because Chance brought up the lawyer that he met earlier on. That means the doctor is able to track him down, and is able to find out that when the lawyer showed up at the house, the guy said he lived here and he was a gardener and all of that. That's the only person who really knows who Chance is. By the way. In the meantime, Chance is getting a whole bunch of opportunities that nobody else would ever get
Good day.
in their lives. First he gets the newspaper wants to interview him, and of course Chance gets caught up in television while he's on the phone, and he starts imitating the things that are on the television while this guy's like, "What is your relationship to the Rand business and everything?" Well, you should ask Mr. Rand that. Like he's just being coy about it. And so he ends up hanging up the phone on him before he answers any questions whatsoever. And then right after that, a TV show, a talk show host wants to have him on his late night program, and he goes in and does the same thing as he always does. Talks about gardening and things like that. And there's even a point where he accidentally insults the president when the talk show host says, what do you think of his views on the economy? His view on the economy, and Chance looks around and he goes, "Which one?" And so everybody laughs because hey, that's something we say about presidents, right? They have too many views on certain things. Who you talk to, and so he gets all this opportunity, and then the old man is he knows he's in his final days, and he starts basically sort of grooming Chance to be his kind of pseudo successor, I guess. I don't know if that's what you would call it, but he's even throwing his own wife at Chance, and Shirley MacLaine has started to become very taken with him, and so there's a series of comical seduction scenes in this where he tries to seduce him at one time, and he's sitting there watching TV, of course, and then she takes his disinterest for being strong and not doing anything, and like that makes her trust him more and everything. And then finally it seems like, oh, now she reads the next time they encounter as like, oh, we're hot for each other, we really need each other and everything. So she comes in, and it just happens to be at a moment where Chance is watching a love scene on television, which I believe is the Thomas Crown Affair, the original Thomas Crown Affair. And she comes in right when this kissing scene is happening, so he is able to kiss her finally. And then he says that, you know, she's obviously wants to have sex with him, and he says something, I just want to watch TV, I like to watch. And she thinks that means he likes to watch people do sexual things and not be a part of them. So there is an extremely bonkers masturbation scene in here where Shirley MacLaine gets on all sorts of positions in this scene, while Chance watches an exercise video and gets in the same position as the person on TV, but he's on the bed while she's on the floor. It is absolutely insane. There's even a scene where he is, and I think this is before this, there's a scene where he's introduced to a bunch of political players. There's a big party where they come together, and like he gets to talk to a Russian diplomat guy, and there's all sorts of stuff in there that's all misconstrued to the point that, oh, Chauncey must know how to speak Russian now, and by the time the party is at the end, someone's like, he speaks 8 languages, and he's got a law and a medical degree and everything. So like that's how insane people are for Chance. And so after this, the old man does die, and there's a funeral where he's gonna be in a tomb that's like a pyramid with like an eye on the top of it, and the what's the saying that's on it? Life is, I can't remember what it is.
I don't remember.
It's the pallbearers are obviously all big players, big political players. Chance has walked away from the funeral. The pallbearers are discussing who are we going to have next. We can't have this president that we have now in there. They go through a whole bunch of names, and then finally someone says Chauncey Gardner, and everybody's in agreement that they're going to make him the next king, basically. And while they talk about that, Chance goes out to the water and walks on it, and then he dips his umbrella down in the water, showing that he's not on anything. And that scene has been broken down and deconstructed by many people over the years. It's obviously up to you what you think that means. I've heard a lot of great interpretations. I will be glad to hear what you guys think of this movie, that ending, and so on and so forth.
Aaron didn't say anything, so I'm gonna go first. This might be my favorite Recotopia film that I had never seen prior to doing this show.
Good.
And I have never seen anything like this. Every other movie or show that tries to do this kind of misunderstanding all throughout leans hard into the belly laughs. Like, I wrote that this is like Frasier, only without a laugh track and without the over-the-top reactions from the other people in the scene. So I laughed out loud a couple points. I'm gonna talk about it, but I don't think this movie is trying to make me laugh out loud as much as it's trying to make me grin and smile wryly and nod and maybe occasionally chuckle. And I just haven't ever seen a comedy that was unconcerned about out loud laughter and just more concerned about keeping this joke going. But when he's in the limo on the way back from the talk show, and this is the only view we get of his appearance on the talk show, is this limo cam, or limo TV cam. And we're obviously super interested in what he had to say on this show. So we see him answer 2 or 3 questions, and then he just changes the channel again. He changed the channel. He got bored watching his own talk show appearance. And that recurring joke, I went out and told my wife all about it, because it starts in the beginning like he's just got a short attention span, and then when he gets picked up by Shirley MacLaine after the car hits him, like she's watching something she's interested in, and he just reaches down and changes it to something else, and it's that like the 70s Basketball Jones thing. And she looks at him trying to understand, why is he watching this? And then she looks back at the TV. It's a great little beat where she's like, what does he see in this? And there's nothing he sees in that she doesn't. That's anyway. But then when he changes the channel on his own thing, that part actually got me after I'd already been telling my wife, this is not a laugh out loud kind of movie. I was kind of hoping he would get new names the whole movie through. Like, he went from Chance to Chauncey Gardner, and I was hoping that would be a recurring gag, so that by the end they'd be calling him Mike or whatever. But Peter Sellers as a performer is just incredible in this, and I read how much time he spent studying and practicing dialects to kind of come up with something that was like unreal, like somewhere between British and American, so that he would kind of feel like a non-human human. I got lots of notes, but I just wanted to say that I really, really enjoyed this, and everybody who has an interpretation about the ending scene is wrong.
Well, and also, the other thing that I had read was that I guess his cadence was trying to be Stan Laurel and Hardy. That was another thing that, and I don't know if you had said that or not. I know that sometimes I go back and listen to these things, and somebody already said something, and I'm like, and oh, by the way, let me show you how smart I am. Anyway, Aaron, what did you think?
I love this movie. I want to retouch on a couple things that Jeremy said, because Jeremy spoke my heart. There is nothing like this movie, at least that I could find. In fact, it made finding a double feature really, really interesting, because I would find something and I'd be like, yeah, but it doesn't really touch on this thing like Being There does. Like, a big part of that is the way this movie comments on racism and specifically white privilege is really, really interesting to me. It explicitly goes there. There's an entire scene with a black woman stating the idea that it's because he's a white man that this can happen. She says she knew him since he was, a pissant, I think she says, and his head was full of oatmeal or something. I don't know. She says she has all these beautiful things she says about him.
Crushed rice.
Yeah, crushed rice. Thank you.
Something like that.
and specifically says, it's because he's a white man that he can get away with this stuff. And the movie goes to race over and over. Chris, you mentioned, like meeting the gangs and talking to these people, and then later they, want to help the businessmen of America. It's the idea of how race enters into this that I find really, really unique. And of course, there are plenty of movies that deal with race, but to do it in this kind of satirical way, I don't know that I've ever seen it like this. You also mentioned Peter Sellers, who I had down as a note that you just can't praise him enough in this movie. He's so good at just embodying this empty vessel and the idea of simplicity or simpleton or whatever you want to say. Like, you believe that he exists only on the surface and in reflection of television screens. Like, you believe that's his entire existence from his performance. I cannot prove it. I tried to find the research, but it's probably not true. But I'm going to continue to believe that Chance the Rapper took his name from Chance the Gardener, and it is a Being There reference, because I think that's really...
You know what's crazy to me is that Chance the Rapper had a Kit Kat commercial before he put out an album.
A Kit Kat commercial?
Yeah, he had a Kit Kat commercial before he put out. He goes to fame guesting on other people's stuff before he put out his own album.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was going to add some things. Go ahead.
No, add away. I've just got a couple more notes.
Well, it's funny to me also that at the end of this movie, over the credits, is Peter Sellers trying to say that exact thing that the gang member told him to tell Raphael, and he keeps laughing because he's trying to keep that straight-laced Chance cadence while he says, "Go get that honky and tell that asshole," and he keeps, every time he says something that Chance normally like a swear word or a slur or something, he just breaks down in laughter. And I had seen this for years, loving the fact that they had put this in the movie, but Peter Sellers did not like this being in the movie whatsoever. And there are some people who believe he lost the Oscar because of this. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true, but the fact is that he was worried that pulled the veil up from the illusion that he was creating. And of course, when he shot this movie, nobody really ran into Peter Sellers. That's one of those method acting things that we always hear about. They never ran into him. They ran into Chauncey Gardner all the time. So I think that he was really upset that this thing was at the very end of it, even though it's freaking hilarious listening to him and trying to get through this whole thing. And that's one of the things that's interesting about his character too, is that he's got a tremendous memory. It's not something that we even really think about, but then when they bring up, and the lawyers bring up the fact that a worker came to their house 30 or 40 years ago to fix something, he goes, "Oh yes, I remember Joe. He had a magazine with men and women, and it's very funny." I love the reaction of the lawyer who's like, oh, realizing what the pictures with men and women meant. But anyway, go on, Aaron.
I think, there are a couple other themes, again, that make this unique. All these combine to make it unique. There's this theme of self-involvement that the movie does really well. Part of the reason that Chance is, just accepted or whatever is because everybody's just so self-involved in their own world that they're not really being aware of him as a human being. They're just aware of how he impacts their world. And so you get time after time when people are putting their own assumptions and their own beliefs on him. He becomes a blank canvas for them to write on, and I think that's such a powerful insight into a human tendency that we all have, and so I really like that. This theme that the line between simplicity and complexity is razor thin. The idea that you can say something that is super simple, but is also super deep. Like, we see this all the time with quotes, and it's like, and it's like, but is it really that deep? Like this idea that we all, I think, can kind of see, and I think that's a beautiful thing too, because it's something that we see in our day-to-day life as well. And then the only other things I had were just some of the moments that made me laugh. The line where he gets in a vehicle for the first time is like, this is like television, only you can see much further. And just like the idea of like, though he was out in the world, he could see everything, but he stepped in a vehicle, and because there's a window there, all of a sudden it became a really cool television. It's just, I think, really smart, so I like that. So, yeah.
He walked all over DC. Because there's a shot where we see him near what has to be the Smithsonian, because the Washington Monument is in the back. And then after that, we get that killer shot of him walking up the median with the Capitol in the background.
Yeah.
That's 2 miles out to the east. I looked it up on Google Maps. I was like, where the fuck is this? Because he just walked. I mean, he walked all over that city.
Oh yeah. And you can see by the end of it, it's nighttime. He's been walking forever with no food or anything.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna get a bit to the ending. I do want to sort of delve into what you guys
let's
think.
talk about it.
What you guys think of it? I had never really regarded that ending
I'll put that
through
to
the
good
many
use.
years that I have, I've known of this movie. I had never regarded it as anything other than it's just a fun movie thing that they put at the end. There's no reality to it. It's just, this is the character we've created, a Christ-like character, and so now we're going to represent it with images at the end of this, that he's walking on water. But if you're going to take any kind of, I guess, literal look at it or whatever, I've watched some videos and things on this. Some of the other interpretations is that a lot of times, we are seeing how others react to chants, and we get to laugh because we know who this character is. But by the end of it, the movie's making you those people because
You stole all my fucking thunder, man.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad that you agree. Keep going. I agree completely.
Yeah, is that maybe he can. Maybe you don't know that he can't walk on water. And so by the end of it, the movie is basically making you one of the characters of the movie. By the end of it, there's another simple one too, which is like, he doesn't realize he would
That's
sink
the one.
down.
That's what I thought. That was the one that popped into my brain.
See, that one doesn't fly with me.
Well, let me
because-
talk about it a little bit, because here's how it worked with me.
No, I mean, okay.
Here's how it worked with me. I'm watching it, and again, I've had time to process this, and I actually I really like the one that you guys were just talking about as well, as a possible meaning. But I do like the idea that the movie at the end turns itself on its head and goes, you know what? There actually is power in obliviousness. Like, there is this thing, whether it's good or bad, we can have a moral discussion on it, but there is power in obliviousness. If you don't realize something is impossible, sometimes you can accomplish the impossible. And I do think we see examples of that, things that were thought impossible that are accomplished because somebody just didn't realize, they weren't impossible. And so that was the one that stood out to me. It also correlates with the actual walking on water story in scripture, where Jesus is basically like, well, you sank because you doubted, all of a sudden you realized you were walking on water and you shouldn't be doing that. Like, that is kind of one of the points of that actual biblical story as well, is about faith, and the idea, well, faith is a little different than obliviousness, but the idea of awareness can ruin the thing because of our own beliefs on what is and isn't possible. So that's kind of where I really like that one. I like to think about that one. I like to talk about that one. I think maybe yours is the more intentional one. From what you were talking about.
So I got to the ending. I had my reaction, and I was like, this is clearly something that people have been talking about for 50 years. Let's go see what the phenomenal theories are. And it does seem like he's too simple to know he's not allowed to walk on water.
Right.
The reason I don't buy that is he gets 5 steps out and then sticks his umbrella down in the water. So he clearly knows this shouldn't be happening because he's testing to see why it's happening. So that one threw me off. So here's what I think. I think we see what we want to see. Just like the characters around Chance saw in him what they wanted to see. I think there are probably some Christian people, I don't quite understand this one, but who just see that as a direct Christ comparison, that he is Christ-like.
I don't get that. I don't get that at all.
Yeah,
I don't get that.
Doesn't really
I
make much
actually, man, on a different podcast, Aaron and I, that we're not doing anymore, I could talk a little bit more freely about this. I could make an argument that what it is saying here, I'm not going to make this argument. I could make an argument that the movie is saying maybe Christ was just
I thought of that
really
too.
simple.
Yes, I thought of that too.
And people saw in him what they wanted. And that was when I realized that maybe that's the point. We see in him and this moment what we see. Who we are. It's a reflection of what we believe.
Yeah. That's a self-involvement thing.
And I think that
you're
makes
talking about,
the most powerful way to kind of walk away from, like, 20 years difference in your life. You might see that ending completely. I thought it was really powerful.
By the way, just as a couple of quick asides before we get to the super secret double feature, the other thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit was his origins, because he obviously shows up at this house at the beginning of the movie without really any. I tend to believe that he is the true heir of that guy that died. I think that guy probably had an affair with the help or something like that, and he was the result of that, and the mom called him Chance because, hey, random chance, lucky chance, these type of things. I think that's what ended up happening, and then the mom died, and he didn't care because he doesn't have any attachments to anybody. But then again, if he has a mom there, you would think that his mom would want to like teach him some things and stuff that's more than just TV. But that's another statement the movie's making, is we often put our children in front of the TV and have them babysit it and everything. So and then the other thing is, if you want to, Aaron brought up a lot of the racial issues in this movie. If you ever want to go and look at a deep dive on this, there's a video on YouTube from Obsessed with Cinema that does a big breakdown on all the and it's really well done. So if you ever want to get into all of that, watch that video. It's like a 40-minute thing. So anyway, let's get to this super secret double feature.
Be very, very quiet. Secret? What secret?
Our dirty little secret.
I tell you something I've never told anyone.
What do you guys think?
Well, like Aaron said, it's really hard. Because
It is. It's a difficult one.
That play like this. I don't think I ended up finding one that plays like this. I'm going to give you two because I'm going to choose. I was torn, really. Do I want to line up the simple guy that's wrapped up in bigger affairs, which is where Eileen Hudsucker proxy, or do I want to go with the political angle of how everything in politics can be manipulated by simple, unexpected? Robert Redford's The Candidate is what I thought of for that.
Oh, yeah.
If you actually had to make me choose, I would choose The Candidate, because I think Hudsucker is just so funny, so laugh out loud funny. And The Candidate is much more of a satire where the laughs are going to be a little more sly. And I hope I didn't steal your thunder, Aaron.
No. I like both of those a lot. Hudsucker, I think, is really good. I too am cheating and bringing two because it's just that kind of movie. Because there are two different aspects. The first one I thought of is not the one I'm going with. It's a more recent movie that, if you want to see this thing done again, this movie does it. It's a movie called Fool's Paradise. Actually came out last year. And this is Charlie Day's movie. And Charlie Day plays the Peter Sellers type role here. He's a simpleton, but in this case, he succeeds in the movie industry despite his complete obliviousness. And it really is being there is a huge influence on this movie. It has to be, because it feels a lot like it. However, Charlie Day is not Peter Sellers, and he doesn't quite pull it off in the same way. So I'm not necessarily giving a huge recommend to the movie. I don't think it works in some ways, but if you want to kind of see this thing done in another avenue, the Fool's Paradise is right there. But I ended up actually going with Idiocracy as my official pick.
Like the flip side.
Yeah, I like it because it's the idea. It kind of reverses that idea of, okay, the fish out of water in this case is somebody who is average in our time, a simpleton in our time maybe even, but is somehow now, king of the future, where TV, again, television, being in screens, all that kind of stuff has dumbed us down to the point.
Out my balls.
Good use.
Out my balls, indeed. So there you go. Idiocracy is my pick.
I love those choices. You guys came up with some really good ones. All right, so next week it's Aaron's turn again. What is your movie that you are going to foist upon us, Aaron?
That is a good way to describe what I do when I pick movies. I foist movies upon you that you're going to have to watch and work your way through. And we're doing Short Term 12
I've
next
never
week.
seen this.
Excited for you to see it. This is a movie that gave us several Academy Award winners in one of their first roles. It is a movie with Caitlin Dever in it, which I know is a big favorite of the crew. And it is a movie about mental health. And I think you guys are going to find a lot to love about it. So I wanted to bring Short Term 12 to the table and take a look.
12. My Googling tells me this is available in many places. Tubi, Pluto, and Peacock for free. Roku, Sling, Vudu, Red. It's free everywhere, guys. It's free on Amazon Prime. It's free. Actually, on YouTube, you need a subscription. But it's free on Plex, Crackle, Redbox, everywhere. And
It's just before Brie Larson did Room.
Yeah.
And
This is
Caitlin
before
Dever's
she blew
probably
up.
pretty young in this.
I remember when the movie came out, and I remember it being like an Oscar contender. I just never got around to seeing it. So
Yeah, it's wild, the talent that got their start here. Lakeith Stanfield, who was just going by, I think, Keith Stanfield in the credits on this one. Brie Larson, Rami Malek, Caitlin Dever, even Stephanie Beatrice, who then went on to fame in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of people coming out of this, and it's a good movie otherwise. So yeah, good stuff.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, once again, chat, thanks for coming out and making the discussion lively over there. Very happy that you guys come over and watch us talk about these movies and everything. I'll be very excited about Short Term 12 next week. But that is going to do it for this episode, guys. So, Aaron, any announcements before I start doing the see you bye thing? And you just
No, I think we're good. Everything seems to be on a normal pattern here coming up. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week. See ya. Bye. Be a part of the live show by being a member of the Sin Club at Patreon at patreon.com/cinemasins. Chat with us on the CinemaSins Discord at discord.gg/cinemasins or CinemaSins Twitter at cinemasins, and email any comments or questions to recotopia@cinemasins.com. That's RECOTOPIA at cinemasins.com.
On one of the videos that was like, I love your channel. I will ride for you till the day I die. Why don't you post things at the exact same time?
I remember one of our videos was you couldn't see it in a whole bunch of other countries other than the U.S. and Canada.
Right. Yeah.
And he got on our Facebook when we were still doing the Sincast and everything, and he said, "Why do you not make these videos available in other countries?" And I said, "Do you think that I don't want this to be in your country?" And he goes, "Well, it's not available here, so what else is the other explanation is there?" And I said, "Because YouTube is making it where it's not available in your country."
Yeah.
And I bet he just went, oh, okay.
Well, he didn't say anything after that. He just realized, he probably was like, "Still, I should have been able to get it to my country."
Yeah.
I think even when I was in high school, I was taught that quote about, like, the smartest, the wisest man is the one who understands what he doesn't know, or something like that.
That's Plato, man. That's Socrates. That's like the history of philosophy is based on that idea.
Yeah. Well, I didn't take any of those classes, but somebody taught me that quote. I didn't know. I didn't know.
Well, I don't have your titles.
You guys, an outtake recommend.
Oh, okay, cool. I'm down for this.
I got a mixology kit and a mocktail cookbook recipe book for Christmas. So I've been making mocktails and posting them online.
I've seen some of those.
I'm going to give you an easy, quick and dirty breakfast mocktail. You just fill a glass with ice, a tumbler, and throw some fresh OJ in there to about halfway up, and then put ginger beer in to about that much left open in the cup, and then drink it. ginger beer is the magic ingredient to cocktails and mocktails because it brings a slight bite, just a tiny bit of bitter to counteract the sweet. So there's a recipe that I make where I muddle fresh oranges and limes and mint, and then I do this. I put orange juice over it and ginger beer. But in the mornings now, I've just been doing quick little half bottle of orange juice, half bottle of ginger beer. It's very refreshing. A little fizz with my morning OJ. There you go.
Very nice. I fear ginger beer.
You fear it? Oh, well, yeah, with your tongue.
Yeah. I have never had a beer that I thought anybody would ever want to put in their mouth again. Like,
Not even root beer?
That is not a beer.
Well, neither is ginger beer. Ginger beer is like root beer. It's not
Okay.
alcohol.
All right. You're starting to convince me.
It's basically ginger ale with some really strong ginger flavor. People drink it as a beverage, but just like ginger beer.
There is an overemphasis on the constant comparing and grading. It's art, it's not math.
What is your job with TNA?
I take what creative does and translate that to talent and help coordinate all that on headset.
What's something that when you see it happening in the ring, you're going, why are they doing it like that?
Terrible, shitty covers on pin.
People now choreograph the entire match.
What's done now is so much faster and so much complicated, so you have to sit down and put that together.
You dancing. What's the story behind that?
I don't believe it was ever supposed to be a dance game. It's supposed to be like an end zone celebration.
Yes, Lance Storm is back on the show. You can check out the first interview that we did with him right there. It was back in September, but it was over Zoom. And I just feel like Zoom interviews are never the same. So I couldn't turn down the opportunity to sit down with Lance in person. We recorded this in Las Vegas during TNA Hard to Kill weekend. And it was just great to see how his mind operates. Like, it's on a whole other level when it comes to wrestling. So I know that you're going to enjoy this. But if I could be serious for a minute, if you've ever enjoyed any interview we've ever done on the channel, please take a second right now, super kick that subscribe button, and enjoy this conversation with Lance Storm.
You escaped the cold.
Yes.
That thing you posted on Instagram, where you could only see this much of your face at risk of getting frostbite, I guess.
Yeah. It was minus, 42 with the wind chill.
Oh my god!
And I had to shovel the driveway because there was snow. So yeah, that's when I pulled out the ninja hood and the toque and everything.
Do you and Brett commiserate about like, hey, we still live in Calgary? It's pretty cold here.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't know why we always stay, but we do.
My sister lives there, and right before I saw your post, she had sent me something. She's like minus 50 with the wind chill. I'm like, that's crazy. But also in Calgary, it could be like, above freezing, just like that.
Oh yeah, like 4 days ago it was above freezing. And again, the conversion for the Americans who don't understand Celsius, once you hit minus 40, it's the same. So like minus 50 Celsius would be like minus 60 Fahrenheit. So that blows people from
Crossover to the point where Fahrenheit somehow becomes colder than Celsius.
Well, it's because the degrees of temperature are different sizes, so they have to cross at some point.
That's right. You're e-signing.
I don't know what to do with this feeling.
Yeah, you do.
All hands meeting! Listen up! You've been drowning in paperwork. That ends today!
The thing that gets me,
Americans can't understand.
there's only 3 countries I think that use Fahrenheit, and America's one.
Yeah.
And it's the other thing that gets me is like Celsius, 0 is freezing, 100 is boiling. Makes perfect sense, right? And I feel like in Fahrenheit, they're like, what should we make freezing? I don't know.
30.
How does 32 sound? Perfect. What should we make boiling? 212? Done. That doesn't make any sense. Perfect. I just got a whole bunch of people that hate me now.
Convert Kelvin to that.
I've gone way over my head.
Those were absolute 0 countries. Because you get to 0 degrees Kelvin, all physical motion stops. So like everything is dead because the molecules stop moving because it's so cold.
You're as wise as you are handsome.
Wow. That was
When we did our interview, however many months ago that was, I said, if we're ever in the same place at the same time, we got to do it in person. And here we are.
Here we are in Vegas. I almost didn't make it.
Really?
Well, just the flight delays, and I wasn't sure I was going to get out of Calgary.
You are so much more jacked in person than I think people would realize. Like, you're still in ring shape, I feel.
No. Really? No, I'm not in ring shape.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
You feel like you could still go?
I could still go, but I'm not putting on tights and taking my shirt off in the ring anymore. I'm 54, coming up on 55. But the cosmetic ring shape I am not in. I think I could physically do the other part.
Sure.
But I have high standards I hold myself to.
When was the last time you took a bump?
I would imagine probably at the tapings in Chicago in October. I wouldn't say most tapings, but I would say every taping that you like to come for some reason or other to demonstrate something or just because I'm in the ring and I take a bump.
Most people are like, I'm trying to avoid taking bumps at all costs. You're like, yeah, if I'm in here, I might as well.
Never been afraid of bumping.
No, I mean, seriously. I had Jericho on the show last month, and I was telling him how you and I were talking about how, there's the opportunity to have his first and last match against each other. And he's like, actually, I was talking to Lance about renting out the building where we had our first match and doing it move for move. Is this a possibility? Is this actually going to happen?
Well, you're omitting the next sentence where he said he doesn't want to put an expiry date on his career and actually pick an end point. But it's funny because the building is still there. I actually went to a wrestling show there a few years ago. But I remember Jericho, he was at a concert in Edmonton, and on the drive back, he pulled into Ponoka and went to the building and took a photo up front. And he sent me the photo. And then I was going up to Edmonton a few months later or whatever. I'm like, I'm going to stop in too. And I stopped in with a buddy of mine. And I had the photo that Jericho sent me. And I tried to stand where I would stand if I was beside him. And like stood with my arm out like this. And I'm like, someone's going to Photoshop these two together. And so I sent him the photo of me standing in the same spot. And then I had a bunch of people on the Observer message board do some Photoshops for me to get us put together.
I could have looked this up on Cage Match. He wanted to take this. Oh my goodness.
Terrible book.
So, I mean, potentially, Jericho's last match could be a time limit draw.
If we, because he mentioned about doing the exact same match. And it's funny, we could, because we didn't do anything then that we couldn't do now.
Okay.
But, because I thought, oh, that would be really cool. It might even be my suggestion as a joke, but anyone that came would be so disappointed.
Is one of a kind. Is it not a good match?
Well, it's fine, but we don't do any of the signature stuff that they would want to see.
Sure.
Like, there'd be no code breaker, there'd be no lion tamer, there'd be no half crab, there'd be no super kick. It's like, there'd be no Judas like nothing.
Never existed.
No.
Yeah. You call it the half crab?
That's all I've ever called it.
That's the Canadian Maple Leaf. Lance, come on.
Nope. Now, the only, I was in WWE, there was a point where they wanted to call it something. And I think it was called on like one shirt, other like one something. They're like, what do we call it? Because at the time, I'm not Canadian. And I come up with the idea of calling it the straight shooter.
That's great.
Because obviously it's not the sharpshooter, and I'm, if anything else, I'm a straight shooter. And the fact that you just keep the one leg technically straight side to side, I'm like, oh, the straight shooter, and they liked it.
Yeah.
And I think it got called that.
It actually did get called.
I believe there's one Sunday Night Heat match where they referred to it as the straight shooter.
So then how did it become the Canadian Maple Leaf?
Never really did. Like WCW called it that when I was doing it, but
that's what I know it as.
I never liked the name, didn't want to call it that. Like, I've never liked gimmick names. I remember when I started in ECW, would have been probably after the first match or two. And Joey Styles pulls me aside and he's like, you have any special names for, the moves and stuff you do? I'm like, no. He's like, well, what do you want me to call that spin kick off the top rope? I'm like, call it a spin kick off the top rope. He's like, what about that thing where you roll back into the half crab? I'm like, call it a rolling half crab. He's like, okay. And he just walked away.
Why don't you like gimmick names?
I just think it's all dumb. Like, I joked with Edge, because I always used to laugh at Edge, because he had the Edgecution, the Educator, and there was that brief period of time where he was trying to get over a sort of reverse sharpshooter. You start with the sharpshooter, but then you spin him to your belly, but you stay facing him. And he was like trying to come up with, and I joked, was like, just call it Edgelicious. And he's like, no. I'm like, yes.
But his spear was just called the spear.
It wasn't spear.
It could have been the. Oh, geez. Trying to think on the
Like,
spot here.
to me, unless you're the one that actually invented the damn thing, then maybe. But it's like having sweet chin music in the last. Oh, that's a super. It's like everyone knows what it is.
He tunes up the band. It is not a super kick. It's the sweet chin music.
If you're looking to burn more calories to help with your weight, you gotta check out the infrared sauna blanket from Bond Charge. This has been a game changer for me. You guys know me, I'm all about health.
Yours is like the super duper kick.
Mine is just a very friendly super kick.
It's just because you're a really friendly guy.
Yeah, I was just never comfortable kicking people in the head because I never wanted to hurt anybody, and that's something else too. Like when I broke in, especially with the veterans that I worked with pretty quickly, it's like you were expected to be feather light with everything. It was all about safety and working, and I think there was a degree of pride in that. The faker we can be and still have them think it's real, the better we are. Because we're really fooling them. Like, if we really just punch each other and they think we're punching each other, it's like, well, where's the art in that?
Sure.
So it was like, you know, you wouldn't want to dimple the skin touching someone. So I'm like, well, I can't kick people in the head. I might actually hit them. So I had to get really good at it before I was willing to.
And then the story you told on the last episode about kicking brick walls, I feel like there's a bunch of green wrestlers that are doing this now. They're like, if that's how Lance got his super kick to look that good, I guess that's what I'm doing from now on.
I hope so.
I mean, it clearly worked for you.
It certainly did, and it's just getting used to extending the toe if you need a little extra inch and pulling the toe back if you need less.
That's wow. I never even thought about that.
I never hit him with the heel, always with the ball of the foot by the toes, and you just adjust accordingly.
Yeah. So you are ducked out head to toe here in now vintage Impact Wrestling gear. It's not Impact Wrestling anymore.
Well, I believe, I could be wrong, and I don't know when this is going to air, but we're a day out from the big TNA relaunch at Hard to Kill. I think the television show is still called Impact. I think it's TNA Wrestling is the company, and I think it'll be TNA Hard to Kill, but I believe Thursday nights, Access TV, Fight Network in Canada, I think it's TNA Impact Wrestling, and it's Impact is like Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah.
I'll put that to good use.
Hear me, my son. I alone will tell you the truth. Death.
So maybe this isn't vintage gear then.
There'd
be a little TNA logo on there though.
Yeah, I think they need to give me new stuff. That's my job tomorrow. Where's all my free merch?
For people who don't know, what is your job with TNA?
Producer coach is sort of what I would consider it. It used to be an agent job, but they like to call it producer now. So, yeah, I take what creative does and translate that to talent, and then help coordinate all that on headset.
Like, walk us through what a run of show would look like, because I think people hear producer, they go, oh, okay, so Lance is the guy that's behind this match, but what does that actually mean on the day of?
Well, it means more or less depending on the match. This is something that I always, again, I probably only DM Dave Meltzer, you know, a couple times a year with a quit saying that agents put their matches together. That's not what they do. And he just apparently ignores me and keeps saying, well, this guy put that match together. I'm like, it's not what producers do. At least not all of them. I usually also text Brian with a, quit saying that. But, again, obviously there's a production meeting. Everybody knows there's a production meeting, and creative's got the run of the show, and they run down the show. And each producer is assigned anywhere between 1 and 4 matches, depending on whether someone misses a fight or not. I think 4 is the most I've had, and that's when you have to TV in one night.
Oh,
You got to do more.
Yeah.
But so you're assigned a match, so they'll go over the match, and you take notes of all the things that the creative wants out of it. And if again, if there's specifics on, hey, we want some kind of plausible deniability of cheating that we can do. I'm like, okay, so now we're responsible for coming up with an idea. And if it's creative and goes with it, then, hey, this is the finish we'll do. And then you go to talent and go, hey, you've got this many minutes, this is what we're looking for. And you give them the information that they need, if there's commercial breaks, if there's anything else. And then depending on who the talent is, they'll go put a match together and they'll come back with you and you go over what they've got. And if it fits all the criteria, go great. Make notes with, hey, this would be a good time to have a camera here. This might be good here. Hey, there's a dive over here.
Yeah.
Hey, there's going to be a blind tag here. Someone's getting tripped here. All the things that you want to make sure the cameras catch.
Yeah.
You, as the producer, has to make notes and know that, okay, once they kick out of the sweet chin music, I don't know why we'd kick out of it if it's Sean's, but that after that they'll be going into a spot where sensational Sherry will jump back a few years, is going to trip Sean's opponent. It's like, okay, when the sweet chin music happens, you got to let the director know. It's like, hey, right side, there's going to be a trip. We need to see Sherry in a minute, so that he can tell the cameraman, hey, make sure you're looking at Sherry here. So he'll frame Sherry. The other guy's watching the action, and the director's got to make sure to cut to see what you need.
And you're telling them this as the match is going on?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you're like, okay, now after this, keep an eye out for this next thing.
Yeah, it'll be, there's a trip coming, and again, whether it be left side, right side,
Sure.
whatever, you tell them what side so that
Yeah.
they can let them know. Same thing with dives, to make sure that there's a
Yeah.
camera there.
And you're going, they said they were doing it on the left side. They're doing it on the right side.
That happens occasionally.
Does the talent come up to you and say, here's what we're thinking, this, what do you think?
Often.
Okay.
But that's where, it depends on who talent it is.
Sure.
And that's where, too, if it's more complicated, like we've got a hard to kill. Women don't have a lot of experience with Ultimate X. I think it's only the second women have ever done. And I think there's only one or two women in it that were in the other one. So I would imagine those women will want to maybe pick Chris Sabin's brain and go, you've done an Ultimate X a couple of times. You got some ideas. You have, you know,
here is dead
stuff
and
like
lifeless.
that.
Yeah.
And similarly with, you know, a lot of tag matches and stuff, especially with the women. 'Cause that's one thing that the women have, they get a bad rap sometimes, where if, you know, a tag match, and this isn't just in Impact, it's with everywhere, but it's like, up until recently, women never did tag matches. Like, if you went to the Trish Stratus era of women's wrestling, it's like, she did a bunch of single matches. There's no Rock and Roll Express with women. There's no Midnight Express with women.
Yeah, there were like the 6-pack matches with
Like
the men.
But, like,
You
know what I mean? So it's like, they've had so much less experience of doing tag matches. So, if I'm assigned a women's tag match, I'll be more involved. And again, a lot of times they'll go, hey, we gotta be like, yeah, awesome, great. Or I'll be like, okay, but what if, and we change things and pick ideas. So sometimes I might put 0% of the match together. Sometimes it might be 10, sometimes it might be 50, sometimes, you know, it just depends on what we need. And sometimes if it's really complicated, then it's gonna have to be predominantly me, because there's too many pieces that the creative wants, and it's like, okay, I gotta make sure we dot all these I's and dot all these T's, cross all these T's. So then I do more of it.
Quick time out from this conversation because I need to tell you about Mudwater. If you're a coffee drinker, listen up.
Not just Impact, but when you're watching wrestling in general, you're going, why are they doing it like that?
I think my biggest pet peeve, and is what I consider just terrible, shitty covers on pins. That it was a couple of years, actually, 5 or 8 years ago, that Vince became obsessed with, you gotta hook the leg, you gotta hook the leg, you gotta hook the leg. And so everyone in WWE started doing this, and then I think everyone just copies because that's what they watch. But I would say 9 out of 10 pins today, the person goes towards the guy's hips and grabs the leg and then rolls his back onto the guy's stomach.
I can't carry anymore.
And the guy making the pin is staring at the ceiling with no weight above the dude's, or female's,
Deckard Cain,
sternum.
you've got to get out of here.
And it's like, this pin is terrible. You're not holding the shoulder. It's a terrible visual. Now, there's a lot fewer of them in Impact, in TNA, because I have been harping on the talent since day one. And it's like, you can still hook the leg, but go to the shoulders. And you can just tell that everyone's thinking leg because the person's laying there in front of them and they go towards the hips first. On the shoulders, you can reach back and get the leg. And then the other thing that I harp on people is when you're covering the shoulders, chest to chest, with your head up, you can see your face. You ever heard the expression, oh yeah, he always looks at the lights, he's a loser? Everybody making those pins looking at the lights. I'm like, save that for the guy losing. And the one that I usually go and I do a quick Google search, and it's a part of why she got it. But look at the way Rhea Ripley pinned me. You know she won.
Yeah.
And you know that she's the boss. She's in charge. She won this match.
Why so serious?
We create the world of the dream. It's called
It's almost like an Undertaker pin, you know, where like...
Well, she, and again, what's her name? I always blank on her name because I think of her old name first, but Selena Vega. She was the one who got ragdolled and pinned, stacked up so many times early on.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, there was the old Road Warrior pin where Hawk could do like the hands together close push-up on the guy's chest with his tongue sticking out. And it's like, that's a great camera shot.
Yeah.
Dude gets over. How many times do you see Hogan counting with his face up? It's like, you want to send the message, especially for a baby face, but for anyone trying to get over, it's like, he's the winner. And if that brings you joy as a fan, it's like, associate that feeling with his face.
Yeah.
Not the top of his head as he's looking at the rafters. I used to joke to all my students in class, I'm like, if you're looking at the ceiling, the only person that can see is Sting, and he ain't up there.
Is wrestling just not enjoyable for you to watch anymore?
I still enjoy some. and it's funny in that it's the same thing if I'm, you know, critiquing a match for someone.
You have risked your life to rescue
I just watch it.
Cain. For that
And if
we
there
thank
isn't
you.
anything that doesn't make sense or contradicts or something that just goes against my grain of thought, I'll just enjoy it. But when there is something that's just like, then I really stop enjoying it. And there's everybody in wrestling has their specific pet peeves.
I just feel like when you're in it that much, I can imagine like a movie director. It's probably difficult for them to watch films because they're going,
Good day.
but they're probably also going, oh, how did they get that shot, or how did they do this?
Yeah.
There must still be an element of awe.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because that's, again, as part of my job too, I generally, you know, television show and stuff, watch it back and we'll send talent feedback. And there are times where I'm just like, popped huge for this, you know what I mean?
Hey.
And it's just because they got into whatever they did in a way that I didn't see coming, and it's like it worked really well, and it's like, that was awesome. And then there'll be the, you know, better covers.
Do you send random messages to your previous students and just go, hey, I caught this thing. You're crushing it.
If I happen to be seeing something of theirs and that jumps out at me, I will, but it's just, there was, actually talk about Rhea Ripley, it's funny, because one of the guest training gigs I did at the PC one time, Rhea was one of the people that I worked with for a fair bit. So I think we kept in touch a little bit and a few times, and then when she was, did she win the Royal Rumble and then lost to Charlotte the first time? It was the first time that she was, I think I was talking to her when she was going in, that's right, I was back in WWE, and she was going into Mania against Charlotte. And I was talking to her like a week or two out, and I'm like, to me, you should win this.
Yeah, sure.
And I won't tell you what she says because I don't want to risk her getting heat, but I'm like, to me, you should win this. And she's like, I don't know, I'm just going to do what I'm told. And I'm like, and then she didn't. And again, by then I was fired and gone or whatever. So the second time around, again, we don't keep in touch much, but occasionally I'll DM her. And this, was it last year that she had Charlotte again?
Yes.
Yeah.
And won.
But when they announced the match, I just sent her a DM. I'm like, if you don't win this year, I'll have to quit the business. I was like, you gotta win this time. She's awesome.
I think Brian Pillman Jr. was like, oh yeah, every once in a while, here's some lance. And I'm like, that's so cool. The idea to me that someone would travel to Canada to train with you when you had the school, I love that idea. Like the idea, I think so many people are like, I'm only going to train to be a wrestler if it's convenient, if I can drive there, if I can still work my other job. The idea that people were moving from the States or from Australia or from Europe to train with you and then have gone on to do great things, I think is amazing.
I was surprised because it was just such a different time when I broke in that, you know, it was just wherever. It was like, and I think there's enough veterans in each territory to learn, but I realized when I came to Class 5, there was, like, it's really hard now for people to break in because when you first start, you're on the dump show with dumpy workers. So it's like, there's no one to really learn from it. It's hard to get to that small show with decent workers. And it's like you tend to, more often than not, work with people in your same experience level, and it's hard.
Yeah.
So I think getting a good education from someone who can give you a degree of psychology and help, because, again, when I went to the Heart Camp, which Chris and I did in '90, like, we were taught how to execute the moves and holds and how to fight, but it's like, that was it. Like, there was no psychology. Like, the word heat was never mentioned. The word comeback was never mentioned. The extent of the psychology we're given was, well, if you and I have a match and I'm going over, I'll give you, say, 60% of the match, so you get over 2.
Wow.
I was like, that was it. Because I remember, like, a year later when I taught the Heart Camp. But
Which is also
wild. But, and again, I knew it was absurd. But I knew I would also do as good or better job than the guy that taught us, because I had learned about heat and comeback and, you know, your basic match formulas.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can at least give them more than I was given.
So how long into it do you feel like you really started to figure out psychology?
As soon as I started working with the Stampede vets.
Okay.
Which thankfully was only a half a dozen, you know, 8 or maybe 8 matches in, where, and I actually just recently told the story for a doc that I was interviewed for, but the first veterans I worked with, it was Chris and I against Johnny Smith and Gama Singh. And up until that, it's like, I'm out there calling the matches on the fly as a guy that has no idea what the hell he's doing. And then Gamma and Johnny come over. He's like, yeah, guys, just listen, and we'll be fine. And they're blown away. We're like, okay. And we went out there, and they told us everything, what to do while we did it, and talked us through it. And
That sounds terrible.
well, at first it was, but think about where, again, we started, it's like you didn't choreograph. You were often in separate locker rooms. You didn't even talk to them. So as a guy with 1 match, 2 matches under the belt, going out there with someone you don't know, and you have to think of all of the stuff to call as it's happening, that was hard. Like, I'm like, you know, beating the guy, duck my clothesline and, you know, give me cross body. And when it kicks out, it's like, watch the clothesline. I clothesline him, and then it's like, I'll beat him up for this. Okay, I gotta give it back to him. And it's like, I send him into the corner, and put your foot up. And it's like, I'm half in panic mode, just trying to make sure the match keeps going.
Yeah.
So that when it's just like, yeah, just listen. Okay. And I tie up with him, he's like, yeah, push me. And I start pushing him, he goes back to the corner, and he spins me, and he's like, yeah, block my punch, give me a punch. And I'm like, okay. And I do that, I'm like, wow. And then the match, when it was over, I went, Chris, I'm like, we need to learn what they're doing, because it was 10 times easier and twice as good.
Wow.
And that's when I started working with Jerry Morrow more after that, where I learned how to call a match and structure a match and learned everything.
What about